One that came out of Boston, this story of Usaama Rahim, who I mean, there has not been that much information coming out about him. He was shot dead in the street by was it Boston cops or FBI or some kind of joint? Who was it that shot him?
All right, I'm not exactly sure who fired the bullets, but it was a joint Boston PD FBI, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week surveillance of this guy. And whoever it was he confronted, which is apparently what everybody who's seen the surveillance video that the cops, that the police and the FBI are showing to folks in the community said, yeah, I'm not exactly sure who killed him, but somebody within that network of folks who'd been following him.
Well, no, I mean, do we know why they were following him and sort of under what authority?
Well, I mean, a lot of it is very, very murky. The details of why are slowly starting to leak out. Apparently, he not only on social media but also on the phone with this guy David Wright, who they arrested, who lived in Everett, had been talking about a plan to quote unquote go after the boys in blue. There's some talk that originally he wanted to kill Pamela Geller. I mean, obviously, the details of this event are a little smoky right now.
Now, were the Boston police who were part of this, were they in uniform or were these all undercovers?
As near as I can tell, they were all undercover.
I mean, I don't know. It's obviously it's very early in this whole thing, and to a certain extent, earlier in the week, or I guess maybe it was the end of last week, we interviewed Masha Gessen, who wrote the book on the Boston Marathon bombers.
Right.
And there was a couple of questions that seemed to be that in my mind got more validity when Janet Napolitano tried to address them in a I guess what was a book review of her review about what relationship the FBI had with the older brother. And I guess maybe that just sort of has me now on sort of in my not quite tinfoil hat, but, there was a time I remember watching, I can't remember what Dirty Harry, what movie it was. Maybe it was the first one, right? Where Dirty Harry is following the suspect and the criminal 24 hours a day. And it becomes a question as to whether or not it's a violation of his civil rights. I just think, there's so many things that we sort of take for granted. Oh yeah, of course there would be 24-hour surveillance on this guy by the FBI and the police department. I don't even understand how that works. Or they have transcripts of him on the phone saying, I'm going to take out some guys in blue. I mean,
yeah.
It's amazing to me that we don't even sort of question hey, wait a second. What? I mean, if we thought this guy was a terrorist, why were we just following him? Or under what authority does that happen?
Yeah, well, again, we don't know. I mean, did they have a warrant for the wiretap? Did they have, a FISA warrant for the wiretap? Nobody's saying anything about that. The details of the actual operation that pretty plainly went bad are very, very smoky. And at this point, I'm willing to accept what the community leaders who have seen the video say, that the guy actually did turn on the police and did actually brandish a weapon, which is not a smart thing to do.
No.
But as to why, there was this situation at all, except for the stuff that's coming out piecemeal from various quote-unquote folks familiar with the investigation, I don't have any idea.
Wow, it's interesting. And like you,
and
I
of
think,
course, the history of the Boston FBI office has not been great over the last 30 years. So.
Well, that's the thing, too, is that in the context of all the Whitey Bulger stuff, this is, who knows? It's just, if past performance is any indicator of future results, right? I mean, it does make you skeptical about any of these stories. It is interesting, though, that one of the first things they did is they brought in local, I guess, Muslim leaders, right? As a way,
and other community activists, the local head of the Urban League and stuff. Yeah, which I thought was very smart.
Yeah, I mean, at least that shows some measure of sensitivity, I guess.
Yeah, because as you know, the person who got shot's brother was on, Facebook almost immediately saying that he'd been shot in the back, which turned out not to be true.
Right. Yeah, that's a strange story. It's going to be weird to see what comes out of it. And the last thing, that obviously I am not pro beheading Pamela Geller. But the idea that, she is sort of now being able to slowly change her image from essentially the leader of, like a hate group, right? I mean, I don't know how else to characterize what she does.
There's no other way to characterize her. Now she's becoming an embattled First Amendment martyr.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very problematic. I saw a part of a transcript on CNN that she did where, she's introduced as the head of some organization, which is like really the functional equivalent of saying like, here is the president of the Association for White Pride. He's the head of the KKK.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think everybody who's working this story has to be very, very careful how they attribute stuff. I think it's interesting though that now apparently the feds have taken over the case completely. This guy David Wright, the guy who was actually arrested in Everett, he's been charged in federal court. So the U.S. Attorney's Office, which of course just got the conviction and the death sentence against Joe Karzanayev, is going to take care of this from now on.
And do we know
whatever local authority? Obviously, I think now it's fairly easy to conclude that the Boston PD was in a support role to the FBI on this.
And do we know what this guy David Wright is being charged with?
He's actually being charged with obstructing an investigation related to a plot. Basically, what happened is on the wiretap on the phone, he gives Usaama Rahim instructions to destroy his cell phone.
I see.
And so that's this guy is 6'8" and 500 pounds too. By the way, this guy may be the biggest guy in the history of federal courts.
Wow. Wow. No, I didn't know. I didn't realize that. So, well, I mean, it's interesting. I know you're in Boston, so I figured I would ask you about that because
it's very interesting to me.
I brought it up this week, but it's very difficult to sort of get a sense of what's going on there. But let's.
Well, I mean, to me, and you've touched on this. The most interesting thing is how sensitive they are to like local feelings.
What do you think that's a function of? I mean, do you think that's a function of?
I think it's a function of Ferguson and Baltimore.
Right. Okay.
I think it's a function of the mass militarized response to the manhunt for the Tsarnaev brothers.
Give me your take on that, because from a distance, my sense was like it's a little bit weird that everything was shut down in the way that it was, but from when I hear people from Boston talk about it, they're like, well, we were scared. And, we didn't know.
I mean, I think, I don't think it would have happened had they not had a high-speed chase where these guys were killing cops and throwing improvised explosive devices out the back window of the car.
Right.
In a residential neighborhood.
Right. It was interesting, though, to see how easy it was for them in some ways to shut down the city, looking for these guys.